Mics are unmuted.
It was the first high school hiring.
Right. Yes. Maybe it'll be more popular next year.
Yeah.
I was glad to be there.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Counselor Steer, can you hear us? Yeah.
So for voting, if your screen goes dead and we can't see you, I'll ask everybody in favor to say aye. And anybody that's opposed say nay. That way, if you're blank, you'll be able to vote.
Thank you. I appreciate that. What I'm going to do, I wasn't able to get into the riot school up here. It is very unstable. My internet's 430, I see. And if I go off video, I'll raise hand as well. So it'll be a visual.
Super. All right. With that good note, it's 4:30. I call the meeting to order. Acknowledge that the District of Tofino operates within the territory of the Tonquin First Nation. Notice to attendees that the meeting is being video recorded and published on the District of Tofino. Notice to virtual attendees to sign up for public comment question periods using the Q&A function Zoom. Registered participants are required to enter their full name, residential address, and the agenda item to speak to. Through unanimous consent, if there are no objections, I move that pursuant to section 15 of the District of Tofino meeting procedure bylaw number 1229/2016 is amended. The May 27, 2025 regular council meeting be held electronically via Zoom and live broadcasted on the District of Tofino's YouTube channel. Facility provided for the public to watch and hear the meeting. They're located at Clayoquot Sound Theater, 380 Campbell Street, BC. No objection, motion is carried. Also, through unanimous consent, to move the May 27, 2025 regular council agenda be adopted. No position that motion carried. And the consent agenda. Also through the chair, I'll move that staff be authorized to issue a special event. Oh, sorry, Arrows here. I'll move item 4.4, recommendation that item 4.1 to 4.3 of the consent agenda on the regular council meeting held May 27, 2025 be approved and received. No objection to that motion. Oh, go ahead.
Question on the half marathon. It says in the report that they're expecting 100 participants. Are we limiting the number of participants? I think they might be surprised.
Let's tell you what we can do is we'll remove that from the consent agenda. And we'll move it under where do we move that, Mr. McCall?
Thank you for the question, Mayor Law. Move number section 10.
Inclusion reports. Yep, okay. Tell you what, I'll make a motion to move item 4.2 out of the consent agenda and move it to actually, why don't we move it to 5.6?
10.6.
Oh, sorry, 10.6. 10.6.
Second up.
Second, any objections? None. We can move that to 10.6. We can discuss it. Okay. Going back to the motion, I will move from the chair that item 4.1 to 4.2, the consent agenda on the regular council meeting held May 27, 2025 be approved and received. I'll just get a seconder for that. Second, all in favor? None opposed, motion is carried, and I can see your hand. Councilor Steer, that works good. Mayor's report. I have little to report except that I'll be heading to Ottawa, leaving after this meeting. Hope to represent Tofino and lobby for some of these, especially infrastructure and watershed discussions, First Nations watershed discussions. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to meeting some of the new ministers. And being hosted by our own MP Gord Jones. Moving on to public comment on agenda items, Mr. McMahon.
Thank you, Mayor Law. I will now do an open call for public comment. For those in the gallery who wish to speak, please raise your hand. If there's anyone attending online via Zoom that would like to make a comment, you can do so now using the Q&A function. Before making a comment, you will need to state your name, your address, and the agenda item you're speaking to. I'll now do a call going once, calling twice, calling 3 times. Any questions at this time?
Okay, super. We're moving on to agenda item 8, delegations, and we have Mr. Dan Lewis representing Clayoquot.
That's me.
You got 10 minutes.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Not mine. Voilà. And the right arrow will make it go to the next slide.
Correct.
That's what I'm here to talk about, protecting wild salmon. We do appreciate all of the efforts of the district, but unfortunately, the staff report and proposed bylaw amendments do not reflect the desire of Tofino residents to protect the marine environment by imposing a clear prohibition on the discharge of toxic bloodwater into the wastewater treatment plant and thus into Duffin Passage. That's what I'm here to elaborate on today. What would be required would be to establish strong pre-treatment standards for any fish processing waste before it comes into the sewage system. As the staff report acknowledges, fish processing waste without suitable pre-treatment can negatively impact the operational efficiencies of the wastewater treatment plant. It is inappropriate for Tofino to rely on the minimum standards developed or adopted by DFO and the BC Ministry of Environment. Tofino needs to be an exemplar and a leader. The importance of nature-based tourism to Tofino's economy and well-being and the values of residents underscore the need for Tofino to adopt strong standards in its own bylaw. And there's no legal barrier preventing Tofino from adopting a bylaw that exceeds the insufficient federal and provincial standards for protecting the marine environment and wild Pacific salmon. DFO's opinion regarding the virus Piscine orthoreovirus does not reflect the best available scientific evidence regarding the harm of this virus to wild salmon. We submitted an expert opinion that has a very different view than DFO. And the scientific evidence combined with the precautionary principle support bylaw provisions that will prevent harm to wild salmon by preventing the discharge of PRV-laden bloodwater into the sewage system and Duffin Passage. So I kind of went over this last time in terms of the effects of PRV on wild Chinook, but it causes the red blood cells to explode, which causes anemia leading to death. The DFO has identified that PRV, sea lice, and tenacibaculum are the 3 major risks to wild salmon on the coast. The marine risk assessment that was done by DFO identified that the west coast of Vancouver Island is a pathogen hotspot because of all the fish farms. And so it is true that DFO has science claiming there's no harm to wild salmon from fish farming. They also have science showing that there is serious harm. And so the only thing that's unique about their science showing that there's no harm is that it isn't matched by any other science anywhere else in the world. So and nobody here is probably a scientist. It's not up to you to make decisions about science. However, when you have, it'd be like if the Ministry of Health said cigarettes are safe for children, and we've got another study saying cigarettes cause cancer. In those kind of in this situation here, where we have discrepancy in the science, that's what the precautionary principle is about. Is if the only way to prove the harm is to cause extinction, it's too late at that point to find out that there's a problem. And so that's where I would call on you to be using the precautionary principle, because the Pacific salmon are in dire straits. The Upper Kennedy River had 1 Chinook come back last fall. That is a pathway to extinction. This is a serious issue. Critics of the Industry have warned about the phenomena of regulatory capture, which has unfortunately influenced DFO and the Ministry of Environment. The officials have developed an unhealthy, close relationship to industry perspectives. So for example, the Canadian Science Secretary did a study on sea lice impacts on wild salmon and concluded there was no impact. There's no relationship between the number of sea lice on the farm, the number of sea lice on the wild salmon. We've got the original of that report, and you can see where the lead author struck through all the text and said, change it from we see a correlation to we see no correlation. One of the principles of open science is you share your data. It took 2 years to finally get that data released. And shortly after the data on sea lice was released, the authors of that paper came out and said, actually, on reconsidering it, we feel there is a strong correlation between the number of lice on the farm and the number of lice on the wild fish. So relying on DFO studies that say fish farming is safe is a pretty risky business. So to safeguard the local economy, environment, and community, Tofino needs to adopt higher standards. It is also inappropriate to give wide discretion to staff at the wastewater discharge permit stage to determine whether fish processing waste will be prohibited. Proper protections for the marine environment and wild salmon can and should be incorporated into the bylaw itself. The wastewater discharge permit application materials and any associated district policies are integral to proper enforcement of the bylaw. As such, these materials must be disclosed to the public for review and comment prior to the bylaw receiving second reading. While federal and provincial regulations do not mandate public disclosure of monitoring, sampling, and testing results of fish waste effluent, Tofino can and should do better and incorporate language into the bylaw providing for public disclosure. To require the public to obtain testing results through FOI process is unreasonable. It's costly and cumbersome, and it takes a long time. So in our opinion, the bylaw is not ready for second reading. Further amendments are necessary to protect the marine environment, wild salmon, and Tofino's nature-based tourism economy. Based on all of the above reasons, we would ask that council approve an alternate resolution, refer the matter back to staff, and incorporate further amendments into the bylaw. A, prohibit the discharge of inadequately treated fish processing waste into the wastewater treatment system. Establish clear, strong standards for pre-treatment of any fish processing waste before it gets into the system. And mandate public disclosure of monitoring, sampling, and testing results of fish waste. Staff should also be directed to draft the waste discharge permit application materials and policies and disclose these to the public before the amended bylaw is considered for second reading. That's it.
Thank you.
Happy to answer any questions.
All right, we can open it up to questions. There are any, and there's going to be some discussion actually later on the bylaw. And I'm sure Mr. Kirk will be able to speak to that. Go ahead. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you. Mr. Liz, I'm wondering if there is an example of a fish farm anywhere in the world that you would say adequately pre-treats their waste.
There are land-based systems that are closed loop and are treating the waste properly. So I think an example of that would be the one in Nova Scotia. I can definitely provide examples of them. Yeah.
I'm just wondering for, not land-based, for people that are, because it's, I think when we had spoken individually about it, I have concerns about asking industry to innovate by us demanding essentially, as opposed to requesting something that exists and is doable.
Yeah, I mean, whether you farm the fish on land or in the water, they're going to end up with disease probably. And certainly in the water, there's no system in the world that's able to contain pathogens. The open nets just allow it to flow in and out. And there's a number of sort of in water, they're called closed containment systems. We have one here, which is, I've got the footage from DFO of all the poop coming out in the feed pellets. It's not working. It's right here in Clayoquot Sound. It's been a major mess this winter. So the Norwegians are the ones that have been innovating on this for about 10 years. Their government there has been incentivizing innovation, and they've come up with nothing that will 100% contain the effluent. And because fish breathe through their gills, if it's in the water, it gets in the fish right away.
Just for clarification, maybe this first control is about the fish plant processing waste that goes into this one.
I did a little bit of research on this, but not as much as you. And so I was just kind of looking for some clarity if you had it. I think I read, I mean, it's really hard to read it all because there's Atlantic, all these different types of species in all these different types of waters. But what I think I understood was if the local salmon are not impacted by this virus, that it can also reduce their immune system to other viruses.
I'm not aware of that. I'm not sure. There hasn't been a lot of research on the effects of PRV because it's an Atlantic salmon virus that came from the Atlantic. So there hasn't been a lot of research on what happens to Pacific salmon. Chinook, they've established that it causes jaundice. They were testing sockeye salmon, and when the results looked like they were going to show harm, they shut that study right down.
Thank you. I just wanted to, in your presentation is very extensive and there were lots of subjects touched on. I just want to bring this back to, I believe, your main concern question, which is fish farms aside, processes aside in fish farms and sea lice. As Mayor Law said, where your concern is that fish plant processing effluent would not be adequately treated by the wastewater plant.
That is correct.
So I was wondering, and I think I may have asked this question before, given that the wastewater plant is adequate for treating human waste, which is also full of viruses and so many other things, where does your concern lie that PRV would not be as effectively killed as other viruses that are already in the wastewater?
That's a really good question. I'm not a virologist, but my understanding is PRV is extremely hard to kill. It is a very resilient virus. It's also extremely like contagious. So if a little bit gets out, it's already going to be a problem. So like the Browns Bay plant over on the East Coast, they were treating and killing something like 99% of the PRV. When wild fish were immersed in that effluent that had been treated, with only 1% of the PRV left, 2/3 of the fish developed PRV. So it's extremely, an extremely strong, virulent virus.
Thank you. Just one follow-up. Do you know what treatment methods Browns Bay was using? Was it going through wastewater treatment plant or was it being treated on site?
I think they were treating it on site, more like what Cermac's doing already here. So it's a dissolved air flotation system, possibly UV. I'm not sure exactly what Browns Bay is doing. I can find out.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Councilor Anderson.
My sort of feeling about it is that wastewater treatment certainly does a better job than what existed previously. And also it does a better job than a bunch of open net farms are doing. Given that it is being treated to a higher standard than ever. I don't fully understand the concern. I mean, what I'm worried if we bring in more standards to regulate what goes through the wastewater plant, it may end up being treated by the fish plant and not even put into our system at all. And then they will go with whatever standards that you don't like. And so there's a concern there. And at the same time, these viruses presumably exist in these fish and are in the environment all the time from open net farms. So how much we can do to solve that with what flows through the wastewater plant. I'm not sure. So I don't know if you have any feedback on those kind of comments.
Well, Yeah, I mean, so this is what I was saying about brown space. They were killing 99% of the PRV, and that still left enough PRV to infect 2/3 of the fish that were put in it. So it's, for me, the bottom line is, are the fish safe? If the fish are safe, then I'm happy. So I'm concerned that the wastewater treatment plant right now, we don't know how much PRV is being killed in there because it's a really hard to kill virus. So I don't know what viruses have been tested when we're told the percentages of viruses that are killed. I don't know how those viruses compare to PRV. That would be a really basic question for somebody to answer. And then, sorry, what was the second part of your question?
Well, presumably what we were discharging before, nothing was being killed. So
Right.
it must be doing a better job.
Yes.
And also, we can't, if we bring in regulations that are too strict, the fish plants will probably come up with their own treatment method, which won't be any better than what's happening already, possibly. So anyways,
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
some of my thoughts.
Yeah, I think for me, my job is to try to protect the fish. And so if we're putting something out that could infect 2/3 of the wild Chinook passing by, I feel it's my duty to do something about it. And I hope that you feel the same way. If it ends up going to the province, then I'll go over there and I'll harass them next, you know. And it's, as I said earlier, you're in a unique position where you're a municipality that has a fish plant in the district. I don't think there's any other situation like that. Like if you go to Surrey, there might be poultry plants, but poultry viruses into a liquid effluent are not necessarily going to affect poultry. So it's where you have fish viruses coming out in a liquid form into an environment containing wild fish. You're in a unique situation. I don't think it should be up to Tofino to kill the PRV. I think it's up to Cermaq to kill the PRV before it comes into the system. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, we can also, this will also come up in certain Mr. Critical list.
Councillor Steer. Go ahead, Councillor Steer, if you can hear us. Okay, there was another hand up.
Keep flashing on my screen, unstable. I don't know. Can you hear me on my audio?
We can hear you now. Go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Through the chair, just a quick question to Mr. Lewis. Dan, I know if in my limited research, and maybe you might have some insight into this, has there been any work done on the existence of PRV in our wild stocks to date that you know of?
I don't know for sure. I can find out.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just wondering because when we're talking about the existence of PRV and the potential for infecting our wild stocks, I'm just curious as to if there's been much work done on that at this point. Thank you for looking into that when you get the chance.
I do know that one of the problems with finding PRV in wild fish is that when they're sick, they get eaten. They don't survive. So there have been studies showing the prevalence of PRV in wild fish is higher closer to fish farms and lower the further away you get.
One more question, and then we're going on.
Yeah.
My question was regarding the other processing plant in town. It's my understanding that they don't use our municipal. So how do you feel about their treatment? And is that something that possibly Cermaq could do? If Cermaq did their system and put it into our system, would that alleviate some of your concerns?
Yeah, from what I know, the creative plant is not actually killing the PRV. It's not. And it's also had numerous failures, which I think Cermaq's in-house treatment also has failed. And so when it fails, it's just putting out untreated effluent. It's a bit of a wicked problem.
Thank you. All right, I think thanks for your presentation. Thanks for the conversation. We'll move on.
Thank you very much.
We have correspondence from Ministry of Tourism, Arts, Culture and Sports regarding Tinwith, official name change. So anybody like comment? Thank you, council.
I think it's a great name change adoption, name that was already used widely within the community. It'll be great to see it on maps.
And I should clarify, it's not a name change. It's recognizing the Chalmers name, Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation name of that beach for many thousands of years. Presentations and reports. Moving on, we have 10.1 source control bylaw. We'll get right back into it, Mr.
Council. Today. Presenting the report to council, second reading. Or second reading of the source control regulation bylaw. So today I'll go over a background about what pertained to get us to the second reading. I'll go over a summary of the public engagement phase. Discussion on what consultation feedback was received by staff. We'll go over some next steps and then read the staff recommendation up on the board. So background, the source control regulation bylaw was first introduced and read by council for a first time, October 22nd, 2024. Following that, public consultation period was completed and staff received feedback from public on matters pertaining to the bylaw. Some methods that staff used in relation to obtaining public consultation were such as Tofino, email, letter correspondence, social media, other media networks, district newsletters. Staff held a public information meeting. There were various one-on-one meetings that were made by request by the public, and there has been one previous delegation to council by Clayoquot action, now second, obviously. So some discussion of the consultation feedback period. So staff obviously have heard concerns relating to fish processing waste and PRV. If in response to that, there are impacts to the wastewater treatment plant if fish processing waste is not has not had pre-treatment completed prior to it entering the district sanitary collection system. With pre-treatment, any waste that the district does receive, it is effective in achieving the district's operational certificate that the district is mandated to treat its secondary or its effluent to. In relation to PRV, staff have reviewed reports by both the MOE and the DFO, and there's no serious or concerns that are formally brought forward and moved into regulation at this time. The wastewater treatment plant is operating in accordance with its operational certificate. Staff heard concerns surrounding the development and enforcement of the bylaw. In response to that, staff have developed this bylaw part and parcel with other municipalities and how their sanitary source control bylaws are written and regional districts. Staff reviewed the bylaw with both third-party consultants and legal counsel to the district. Enforcement will be amended by virtue of the municipal ticket bylaw at a future reading, which will come up a little bit later in the presentation. There were concerns that were raised to staff regarding monitoring, testing, and transparency regarding the bylaw. So effluent, as I stated, is tested regularly per various requirements that are stipulated within the operating certificate. There's weekly samples that are sent to the MOE, there's monthly samples, and there's semi-annual samples that are all sent on a regular basis. I've included an appendix in the report to council that is a copy of the operational certificate. Testing and transparency, so users of the system that would be deemed to have a waste discharge permit would be required to submit their own testing results to the District of Tofino per their own unique waste discharge permit. And the district will review that to ensure that it meets all the influent criteria and that there are no impacts to the district being able to effectively treat the liquid waste as it passes through the district infrastructure. There were feedback and raised on permit discretion and accountability. There are some concerns raised about the district discretion, district's director of infrastructure and public works discretion. Staff have reviewed these concerns and do not find any concerns. Staff have also reviewed this with legal counsel, and no concerns were brought to staff's attention surrounding the language that's within the bylaw. With respect to waste discharge permits, as indicated previously, they will be reviewed on a case-by-case scenario, reviewing the unique characteristics of proposed influent flows to the wastewater treatment plant to ensure that there's no risk of the district not being able to meet its regulatory requirements. There was some feedback received regarding pre-treatment and regulatory compliance. With that, staff went and reviewed some of this feedback with legal counsel and did create one update to the bylaw that would tie language of the bylaw back to the municipal waste regulations specifically, which is what the district is bound to under operating the wastewater treatment plant with its operating certificate that has been received by the Ministry of Environment and Parks, actually. It's called Ministry of Environment and Parks. There was some informal feedback that was received outside of the actual consultation period. Staff did receive this. This was surrounding an addition of a defined term for wastewater standards. So staff, as it's highlighted in Appendix 1, which is the bylaw itself, staff have added a definition for this term in review with the staff's, with the district's legal counsel as well. So that's a summary of the consultation period. So next steps that staff will be proposing will be to update the municipal ticket information system bylaw to create fees associated with contraventions in the sanitary source control or source control regulation bylaw. Staff will develop the municipal discharge permit and bring it back and present transparently to mayor and council and the public, and that would come at the third reading, which staff are proposing to come back to mayor and council in fall of 2025, with the goal of having the bylaw adopted by the end of 2025. With that there, I will leave the recommendation on the screen and be available to answer any questions council may have.
Super. Thank you, Mr. Kirkman. Okay, I'm looking to council for questions for clarity from Mr. Kirkman, and then if you want to do a round of comments from Mr. Kirkman.
Sure. I was wondering, would it be possible with the substances routinely checked for, like ammonia, like that list that would we be able to test for the salmon virus? Through the chair, I may have to defer some of those aspects of the question. From staff's understanding, there's no official or regulated way for staff to actively test for the PRV virus that's in question. But if council wishes, staff could do some further work and potentially at the third reading, bring back some information or provide a response to that.
Yeah, thank you. That would be something I'd be interested in hearing is, given that it's concerned and has been researched, that if it is possible, I think it should be integrated into the things we do test for. And then I'll hold the rest of my thoughts for comments.
Okay, Councillor Steer.
Thank you, and through the chair. Yeah, thank you, Simon, for the information there. Similar question that Councillor Sawyer and Sloman brought up. But the one question that I did have, in terms of one of the concerns that were brought up was around the public disclosure of the testing results. And so it was part and parcel to understand if there was testing results processes out there for PRV specifically. But in lieu of that, is there anything prohibiting us, or is it complicated for us to be able to publicly post those test results that we do in a public forum?
Through the chair, I may have to defer responding, and get back to you on that one.
Thank you.
Okay, questions for Clay? Go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
Two questions, and one is sort of about the process. If we do give it second reading now, we can still look into testing for the virus or other amendments we might want to make to it as we move forward, because I'll leave it at that. That's the question. We can still amend it at any time and still look into some of these concerns as we go towards and even after a third reading, I believe.
Through the chair, any additional testing requirements would be something that council will have to come to a decision on. Staff test in accordance with what our operating certificate tells us to do.
But before second or before third reading?
Or
the sooner the better.
Mr. Rogers.
Through the chair.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Anderson, definitely we can make amendments to the bylaw as we see fit. So given the second reading today, we've heard what council's had to say, and we can go away and bring back that information for council's consideration for third reading. And if we have to change stuff, as you said, we can amend the bylaw.
There's an awful lot in the bylaw that I don't want held up simply because we're looking into the one specific issue, virus. And then the other question was, instead of putting it on the district to test for this virus, can we put it on the industry in a source control bylaw to make sure that they're testing for it before it comes into our system? I think that's might be a possibility too, because I think that's, since it seems to be not a lot of science, it makes it easy to test for. It's quite a burden to put on the municipality. So
through the chair, yeah, staff can look into that for sure.
I think we should continue to look into what we can do about it, but also sort of, anyways, I'm starting to get a comment instead of questions. I'll end it there.
Did you have an extra question?
Yeah, I'm just kind of looking for clarity on, and this might not be the correct time to ask, is this permit that is giving to an industry to add waste to our system. So we give this permit, but the other processing plant would not have this permit. Is that right? Because they don't distribute their waste through our system.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay, seeing no more questions, you can put the resolution back up on the. I have it back up there, and then does council want to have any more discussions, or are we going to be?
Are we gonna comment? So
We can have comments. So we'll take you off the hot seat, Mr. Kirkland, and we can go around with quick comments. Recommendation.
Similar to Councillor Anderson, I think don't see a reason to hold this up at second reading. I think we've getting a lot of information thrown at us. We have time to study that and perhaps incorporate any further information before or do third reading and even afterwards. But
I would share that. I would hate to see any of this held up for something that I think is being presented as not really possible. We haven't been given any examples of any instances worldwide where PRV has been eliminated 100%. So I'm not opposed to saying get the fish farm to test for their plant, but we know that it is going to be there. So I'm not sure if we want to try to, if this is something we look into, if we think of a threshold that will be considered safe. I know that won't satisfy Clayoquot Action because their threshold is 0, but we don't have any examples of how to make that possible. So I feel like we're kind of at an impasse on that. But with the rest of this, I was satisfied to see all the amendments that were made based on the feedback and feedback.
Super. Somebody have any comments?
Yeah, I guess I'm just kind of feeling like, well, this other plant is able to just process their waste and put it into the system, and this would be quite onerous for the other processing plant who uses our system. But I would like to see us test for this virus on our list of routine scheduled things if possible.
Councilor Anderson, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I don't want to hold up second reading. It's gonna take a while to fully answer, and maybe we can't fully answer some of the questions we have on the virus. As governments often do, we have to rely on other governments for the best information. And regardless of the fact that there's maybe contradictory science, there always will be contradictory science. So what's been developed in terms of standards by the provincial and federal governments is what we've come to rely on, unless we start certifying other agencies to give us their science, something like that. I don't know what else we can do. So I think we should get some answers about what sort of monitoring we can do, how good that monitoring is really going to be at capturing and answering some of those questions. Find out if that monitoring can be done before it comes to the plant. And also, I'd like to look into more about where the information can be open to the public. At this point, I'm going to support second reading, and hopefully we'll hear more on some of those things.
Yeah, on one part, I am not in favor of holding this up at second reading. I would like to make the comment that there are, in the list of things we test for, there are 2 types of bacteria. I would be interested to know how virus is looked at in effluent, how we would test for that, because I'm pretty sure it's been done. And there are other types of viruses that would be similar to PRV. Hopefully we could use that benchmark to look at that. And I also do know that, suspended solids are something that we look at in our wastewater, and that's the biggest concern with PRV, is that it's being expelled in Bloodwater or suspended solid effluent. So I would look at this hopefully as something that is going to prevent the discharge of PRV into the water after treatment. And that if we can find a way to look at that and see that, and also share that information publicly, I think it is potentially a really positive outcome of this, and in a way that I'm actually hugely in favor of seeing this discharge go through the wastewater treatment plant.
Councilor Steer, I don't see your hand up, but we're going around the table. Do you have a comment?
No, thank you. I think council has captured many of my comments regarding second reading of the bylaw.
Okay, super. Well, I see no more comments. I think we've got council's okay to read the second reading. We No, we don't have it up there. With some, let me get it in front of them. Councillor Thomas.
I move that District of Tofino Source Control Regulation Bylaw number 1350/2024 be read its second time as amended.
Second.
Second by Councillor Master, all in favor? Of the hand and none opposed, motion carried. Thank you.
I also move that staff be authorized to bring forward amendments to District of Tofino Municipal Ticket Information System Bylaw number 1088/2009.
Second.
Master, all in favor? None opposed, motion carried. Okay, moving on to 10.2 Housing Agreement Amendment Bylaw. Mr. Welsh. It's your first time up here.
It is.
Oh, welcome.
I chose the softball.
It's an easy one. Probably don't even need to stand. I got a PowerPoint.
I do.
Great to have you here.
Everyone, yes, thank you. Council, Mayor, thank you for carving out this time to bring forward two pieces, actually, a housing agreement amendment bylaw, as well as correction of typo within the temporary use permit that this bylaw is attached to. But first, I want to speak to the fact that this is my first public appearance in front of you all in the public as the manager of planning services for the district. I bring with me over 20 years of experience working as a professional community planner, conservationist, designer. I've always been working in support of societal and ecological health. I'd also like to thank you all for providing such an amazing welcome. My family and I feel quite welcomed. We appreciate the warmth and generosity that's been given to us since we've been here in March, early March. So, and I'd also like to take an opportunity to acknowledge the fact that I'm a guest on these lands. And as a guest, I'm committed to follow protocol. And as one would whenever they visit a place. I've signed the Isak Pledge, and I share the Nuu-chah-nulth belief of Sawak, or integrated whole, and I bring that to my practice. So I'll, as the manager of planning services, I'll endeavor to do what's best for all living things that work, play, exist, live here. We all share experience, and our ability to thrive is interdependent on one another. So, bit of a high statement, but I just wanted to give you a little sense of who I am and what I bring to things. Bringing it down, we have this piece in front of us, and I want to speak a little bit to the Local Government Act. So, Section 483.4 states that a local government may, by bylaw, enter into a housing agreement and include terms and conditions that agreed by the local government and the owner regarding the occupancy of housing units identified in that agreement. And so these conditions could include the form of tenure, the ability of the housing units to classes of persons identified in that agreement, administration and management of the housing units, the rents and leases that may be changed and charged, and the rates at which these could increase over time. So here at 1101 Pacific Rim Highway, there's been a temporary use permit in existence for about 7 years, and with it, a housing agreement. This is the Mackenzie Beach Resort. So in 2018, subject property was permitted via a temporary use permit to operate a 20-unit recreational vehicle campground for the purposes of providing staff accommodation for seasonal workers. Permit was reviewed and renewed on August 24th in 2021 with the same conditions, and that expired August 24th and 24. A new temporary use permit application was approved by council June 11th in 2024. And that new temporary use permit granted permission to operate a 30-unit recreational vehicle campground reserved for 75 occupants employed by a Tofino business for stays longer than 30 days. So this basically just showed an increase of 10 units from the previous permits. So the TUP has been in effect for a period of 3 years, or is in effect for 3 years, and it will expire on June 11th in 2027. This, however, is the last time this TUP could be renewed. So the agreement highlights that I want to bring forth. Pretty much are that rental sites may only be occupied by a qualified tenant. And those permitted occupants are defined within the agreement. This is the definition. Usually this is proved through
letter of employment for those tenants. And more highlights, sites are not permitted to be used as tourist accommodations. Maximum monthly rent is $1,085. Park rules such as quiet time, they all need to be laid out in the tenancy agreements. And the property owner is required to provide a yearly statutory declaration of the district to ensure that these terms of the housing agreement are not breached. And so, as I stated, the changes between previous agreements and this one is that we went from 20, 30 units, 50 to 75 occupants, and there was a slight increase in rent as stipulated in the agreement. That actually is slower than I think the basically cost of living increase. However, we also added this piece that enabled us to more or less control the amount of occupants within the area that wasn't previously defined. So the other piece that I want to talk to you is that there was a typo in the temporary use permit. The intent was clear pretty much on all documentation aside from the permit itself. However, the permit stated, and I'll go here to show you that the word 20 was written next to the number 30 and the word 50 was written next to the number 75 occupants. And so there's really no consequence here because what was granted is greater, but we want to correct that typo in this case. And that would only appear on the temporary use permit. So we would resubmit that to landowner. And here we are at the recommendation. Essentially, we have these two items.
All right, great. Any questions from council for Mr. Rob? Before we go straight to the recommendation. Councilor McMaster.
Just change the timing of the temporary use permit, like it was issued in 24, so is it still, we're amending it, does that give it 3 years?
It doesn't restart its period.
Okay, seeing, I got Councilor Steer.
Yes, thank you. And through the chair, congratulations, Josh, on your first presentation to council. I have two questions, if I may. The first is, as you indicated, this will be the last TUP, and typically what we look for in this process is usually a bridge to a rezoning or an amendment to the zoning. Do you know at this point in time, I know it might be outside the scope of the presentation, but is there any work being done on a rezoning for this particular piece of property?
Through the chair, I do not believe we've received any formal applications for rezoning. We are seeing that type of thing take place elsewhere along Pacific Rim Highway, whereby larger resort businesses are trying to rezone and provide more permanent housing for their staff. I'll be bringing forward a few of those in the coming months that are intended to be rezoning and more permanent. And those,
thank you. And
some of those were actually tested through temporary use permits, as you're referring.
Thank you, Jeff. And a follow-up question there, Councilor or Mayor Law. And it's slightly outside the scope, but I just noticed in terms of the amendment to the agreement, in terms of the rent increase for those rental sites, those site rental sites, went from 900 to 1,085. That's approximately a 20% increase in those fees. And I know, and this is, I'll plead my own ignorance on this, that 20% increase, and I know we are mandated by the province in terms of those of us that do have long-term rentals to a very prescribed increase in those our rentals that we're allowed to do. And does that have any bearing on something like this type of agreement? 20%, in my opinion, is quite high over this term. And I'm just wondering if there's any relationship to that rental tenancy agreement that the province gives us in terms of rent increases to something like this.
Through the chair, I'd have to get back to you on a few of those specifics regarding the provincial involvement, but the original rental agreement was from 2018, so we're looking at a span of 8 years. where this took place. So it hasn't been updated in that amount of time. So 20% of our years, essentially.
Thank you for the clarification on that 8-year time frame.
Question from Mr. Sawyer.
Thank you. My concern was also on rent increase. And I was curious if we would be able to amend this and read it without that. Keeping the original rent.
Amended on the fly? I don't think so. We have to defer it back with it actually. That's my opinion, but I will look to Mr. Welsh and perhaps Mr. McCall, and this also to look for the rest of council and see if that's something.
Through the chair, this would be something we'd have to renegotiate with the landowner. Aaron, would you have anything else to add?
No, through the chair, I agree with Phil. It's a negotiation and it's built into the agreement to housing agreement itself. So we went back and speak to them about it. I believe it was meant to capture that basically CPPI increase that's happening.
That's a long now, just to be clarified too, it's 8 years.
7 years, I think it is.
7 years, yeah, so that's not actually, I don't even think that comes to inflation, for sure it does not.
I do not believe it does. And through the chair, I believe that also in mentioning this increase, it was the way we got about it is we reached out to them to understand what they're now currently charging. So this is a reflection of what is currently being charged to tenants. And so it's reflected in.
For my understanding, tenants are currently being charged up to $1,085, which is outside of the original agreement.
Right.
I would definitely like to see this come back then.
Councillor Anderson?
Did the original agreement have like a cost of living increase built in already, or have they been getting increases that were outside of the agreement? Or do we know?
Through the chair, I believe it's in the agreement. I'll have to reference that and get back to you on that. And that is, I believe, how we did this being okay.
May I ask for one more follow-up?
Question, go ahead.
I think that something that would be greatly helpful to my understanding would be to understand why this increase has been allowed to go on and is justified, would be to get a bit more information about what is being provided along with the higher cost rent. And how that was part of the negotiation, which we don't fully have knowledge of. And you may not as well acknowledging that through the chair. Thank you for your.
I will have to, through the chair, I'll have to reference the previous agreement just to verify that. I have reasonable confidence that it's in there, and that's how we arrived at this, where we are today. I can't fully respond to that right now.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay, well, we are at first, second, third reading, so let's, we're gonna look around the council and maybe we can use a few more questions for clarity. It sounds like there's gonna be a little bit of debate. So, we have, councilors concerned about the increase. It sounds like we'll go back to negotiations. Now, maybe one question for clarity, there was a rental increase that we believe was in the original TUP, and thus the increase of 100% over 7 8 years.
We did do our due diligence to understand whether or not that was within the realm of reasonable.
Yeah.
I just need to verify exactly how we're able to come to that conclusion. And I believe it was in the original agreement, but I need to verify that right now.
Right now.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I'm not sure, it doesn't seem unreasonable to me, but I'm gonna go around the council and see. So I'll let you sit down.
Okay.
And noting that if we delay this, it will go back to the negotiation. So let's go around the table. Are we okay with this? Does it seem a reasonable increase? And this is the one.
I personally would prefer to defer. Yeah. I don't believe, and I might be mistaken, I think the rent increases as defined under the Landlord Tenancy Act. I don't think it applies to campgrounds, but I may be wrong on that. So I'd like to have that cleared up. So I think, we need to have that cleared up and then decide on this.
Sounds like we have a comment from Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, through Chair, and sorry to interrupt the comment section. I was just trying to madly scratch
Please.
the agreements we're talking. So under section 3.1H, and I believe this is, I have to go back to see with Welsh has to check, but it says the monthly rent payable by a qualified tenant for secured rental site will not exceed the original rent, notwithstanding the foregoing, subject all to the Manufactured Home Park Tenancy Act. The owner may increase the rent payable by a qualified tenant for a secured rental site annually, beginning with the first anniversary day, which it temporary permit was issued by the District of Tofino, and thereafter any successive anniversary date by an amount determined by multiplying the rent payable by a qualified tenant for secured unit at the time the proposed rent increase by the percentage change in CPI since the last anniversary date. So it's built into the housing agreement that this charge can happen, and that's, I think, what's happening is that it's being brought up to 2025. I don't have any information on the statutory declaration or what happened there. We can talk to our bylaw officers or the planners who are in charge of the time, but I can say that's what the current agreement says, and I believe that's what the past agreement said, because it was pretty much a package housing.
Great. So it was in the agreement, for CPI, if they so choose. But just make that clear. That sounds like that's pretty clear. Sorry, comment, or do you want to, let's go down the table and then you get comment. Notice?
I had just pulled up the same thing that Mr. Rogers had,
Okay.
same information, and also there's no language in the original one about maximum, it just says original rent. So that's a starting point. And then they were able to stick yearly. So it sounds like what we're doing now is putting a cap on it, so maximum, so then not building in to read through. Sorry, I'm trying to read stuff on the fly here with old stuff and compare it to the new stuff. But it does sound like a maximum was not built in previously.
Maybe that's a good question for clarity. Sorry, I need to sit down already, but Mr. Wells, was this a cap as opposed to what was previously allowed as a CPI and CPI increase, or does that now still apply going forward?
Still applies, I believe it marks this moment in time as the sort of the base that we're working from.
CPI as a forward move. Okay. Makes sense to me. Okay. Mr. Sloman, do you have any comments you want to make? No? Councilor Anderson?
Well, I think we're setting out to fix a typo and stuck on a detail that seems to be out, really.
Okay. Seems like it's working out. Councilor Sawyer, last.
I'm still in favor of deferring for clarity. There is, just a few more questions I'd like to ask and give our staff time to come back with, better supplied answers and not put them so on the spot.
Let's just check that out. We might as well have a look here. It sounds like the CPI rent increases have been answered. CPI. What other questions are you looking at that would be significant enough to want to defer this?
So if original rent was previously set at $900 a month, and then that has been increased up to what is now $1,085 a month. My concern is I would like to know where in the agreement there would be language to prevent there immediately being a higher increase up to say $2,025.
I believe it's limited to CPI. Is this, it's in the agreement, CPI, right? So you can't go beyond this. This is a rent cap with CPI.
For existing tenants, however, you can start a new base rent at a different amount, or maybe Kat has better understanding of this, but this is the sort of thing that I would just like to come back and discuss further without Googling things at the table.
The new agreement has is just setting that number at a realistic one for what people are currently being charged. Because the CPI has gone up, this is what the increase is, then this is just marking the time as so it seems like it is pretty straightforward, and there's no way they're not going to come back next time and say with an arbitrary number that people have started on, this is a number that we've built up to, this is what people are being charged on arrival.
we could probably have this answered right now. Rather than delay it, is there the potential for somebody to arrive on this campground and pay $2,000?
No.
No. Okay. Is that it? Is it not still not good?
Well, no, but I'm not hearing that anyone else wants to, put more time into getting information on this one. So.
Well, I'm just trying to see if we can get more questions answered right here. Okay, so the two questions, just for clarity. One was CPI, and so that sounds like it's answered. The other was, can new tenants be Mr. Rogers, charge more?
To the chair, so in the agreement under definitions, which is, there's a definition for original rent, which is also in that other section I previously read. Original rent means 1,085. So that's what you start at, no matter if you come in today or tomorrow. If you came in next year, it would take 1,085 plus CPI increase. And remembering that it's a 3-year term, or 2 years left in the team, so there likely be 2 more increases on.
Okay.
CPI.
I think that seems pretty clear. Councillor Thomas, or sorry, Tom, sorry, you only got Tom up there. Councillor Steer, sorry, my apologies.
Thank you, Mayor Law. My audio has been difficult, but I think the questions around CPI and that cap, and I did pick up the last Mr. Rogers' comment around we're starting now or a year ago on that 1,085. And in essence, the allowable under this agreement would be a CPI increase into that rent. And so I'm comfortable with that information at this point.
One last question. Do you feel like your 2 questions have been answered?
No more questions.
Councillor Master,
I'm happy now.
you're happy. Okay. Well, in that case, I think we're going to go ahead and read this recommendation. Go ahead.
I'll read that the District of Tofino Housing Agreement Amendment Bylaw 1251.01 2025 be introduced and read first, second, and third time.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Any further comments? All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion is carried.
And
Sorry,
second,
Mayor Law, I'm sorry, I didn't get my hand up. I did have a quick comment before the
Oh,
vote.
I thought, sorry, I thought. that
I
was
apologize,
a
I
hand
couldn't.
for, we've actually, do you want to,
No, that's okay, Mayor Law. That's okay. The comment would not have changed the vote. So, but I just apologize for the clunkiness of this setup.
I'm sorry, yeah, well, okay. We've already done that vote, but we're gonna have another one here, another recommendation.
okay, I'll continue. The recommendation is that council, and I move that council approves the correction to Schedule 3, Condition 1 in permit number QP 0224 to read as follows. The permitted temporary use shall be limited to the following: 30 word and 30 numbers, staff accommodation trailer or staff accommodation recreation vehicle RV sites, and 75 word and 75 number occupants. And the corrected version of temporary use permit 02/2024 attached as appendix to a staff report titled Housing Amendment Bylaw Agreement 1251.01 2025, first, second, and third reading, dated May 27th, 2025, be reissued to the applicant.
Second, by Councillor Thomas, and then Councillor Steer, can you fit your comment in on this one?
Yes, thank you. It maybe not directly, but the comment basically, and I think this is what Councillor Sawyer is alluding to in terms of where we talk quite often about affordability, and in the sense when we look at these types of rental increases for this type of space at 1,085 and then moving up from there, it's just a comment around affordability and, in my opinion, a very high cost for that type of space that's provided for those. And so that's only my comment there. I'm not opposed to this, but I just want to make that clear that when we talk about affordability, in my opinion, that kind of for a seasonal staffing for use of a trailer on a site like that, that seems to be very high for me. That's my only comment.
I did just do a very quick calculation, 900 plus general CPI compounding, and it appears to be right on the money, if not no less. So it is actually the cost of money increases with inflation. So it's either the number is higher, but it may not actually be higher if money's cheaper. Anyway, any other comments before I call the question? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? Motion's carried. Okay. Moving on to 10.3, we just have a council calendar amendment, and basically it's moving the committee of the whole onto Tuesdays after June 2nd. Is there any desire on council to make any comments or discussion on this, or we should right to the motion? Let's go right to the motion. Councilor would like to read the recommendation.
I move that the 2025 council calendar attached as appendix 1 to item 10.5 of the May 27th regular council agenda titled 2025 council calendar amendment be adopted as amended to move all future committee of the whole meetings after June 2nd, 2025 to Tuesdays instead of Mondays. And that staff be authorized to post notice of this amendment.
Seconded by Councilor Thomas. Any further comments from council? All in favor? None opposed, motion's carried. I've got to call a point of privilege. I'm really sorry. I'm getting 2 minutes, please. Just to be a sec.
Mute the mics.
We've got minutes from the Council Grant Standing Committee. And we go right into a recommendation. If somebody would like to read the recommendation, barring any discussion.
I can do it. Move that pursuant to the District of Tofino Council Grant Policy, the Council Grant Committee recommends to Council that the following recipients for the 2025 Council Grant Programme be awarded as follows. Carving on the Edge Society Artist Symposium, 3,900. Clayoquot Action Birthday Event, 3,900. Clayoquot Sound Community Theatre Association, retractable riser and spring floor maestro, 944. Clayoquot Sound Community Theatre Association, Monday Night Movies, 3,900. Girl Guides of Canada, Girl Guide Community Hall, in-kind support for a sleepover or 2-day use of the community hall. Pacific Rim Hospice Society, Tofino Walking Club, 3,900. Redfish Restoration Society, Sea Star Stewardship Program, 3,820. Rising Tide Surf Society, a Wellness Day Workshop Event, 3,900. Tofino Arts Council, Outer Coast Non-Profit Group, Digital Support, 3,900. Tofino Community Enrichment Society, Tough City Skate Contest, 3,900. Tofino Community Food Initiative, Seeding Future Harvest, 3,800. Tofino Public Market Society, Tofino Winter Market, 3,000. Reclulet Aquarium Salmon Trail Booth at the Tofino Market, 3,790.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Any further comments? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor? Great. First carried. Sorry, Councillor Anderson, I thought you might have a question. You were jumping, starting. Great. Moving right on then, we have the 10.5 minutes of the Council Grant Standing Committee on the 20th.
Carry on. I move that the Council Grant Standing Committee recommends to Council that the following recipients for the 2025 Council Grant Programme be awarded 1 day of in-kind use of the community hall. Clayoquot Action, Doing Democracy. Rising Tide Surf Society, a Wellness Day Workshop Event. Tofino Community Food Initiative, Seeding Future Harvest. Tofino Public Market, Tofino Winter Market.
Second, Thomas, all in favor? Motion carried.
I move that the Council Grant Standing Committee recommends to Council that staff be authorised to bring forward amendments to the Council Grant Policy for Council consideration based on discussion of the Council Grant Standing Committee meeting held May 2025.
Second by Councillor Thomas, all in favor? Motion's carried. All right, well, there's no any unfinished business, any business.
We've got the half marathon.
6. Oh, right. Oh, 10 point, of course, I didn't write it down. 10.6. Half marathon. Councillor McMaster.
Yeah, I'm not objected to the marathon. I'm just think there should be a cap on the number of participants rather than saying we expect up to 100. Never been in a race where there hasn't been a cap for basically safety concerns, whether it be supplying water or people on traffic. So I think running, jogging is having a bit of a revival at the moment, and maybe pleasantly surprised as to how many people actually want to run in this thing, depending on the weather and how many people are in town. So I think it should be amended to cap the number of participants, whether that be 100 or 50, whatever. I'm quite happy with that.
I think we're going to look to staff here.
Yes.
Such.
Yeah, through the chair. So the event organizers have let us know that the 100 participants have been registered for training. So they're doing a training portion before the race, but they're not expecting all 100 to actually participate in the race. So yeah, there's probably ways we could mitigate that by stating that there is only a cap within the council resolution. It will be along the MUP, and they are crossing the highway at designated crosswalks to get to the beach. So yeah, there is also the ability to request that traffic control personnel be along the route as well by the event organizer, which they had expressed that they would be willing to do that in a previous conversation. So we can open that conversation back up.
Councillor Thomas.
I think having traffic control would be ideal. I think having people running across, even with those lights, I think it just can be a dangerous spot, and I would feel better about the safety now that it's been mentioned.
Maybe I'll just ask a question for clarity from Council McMaster. What is the concern with the number? What is the concern about the number? Is it just the number of people on the map crossing the road? Is there any other ways of mitigating it besides doing a cap?
Let's not keep crossing the road because I'm sure there's going to be some a lot faster than others. So the more people get, the more it's strung out. And it's going to be the turnaround points. They supply water for 50 people, 100 people, 200. I think logistically it's better if you have a chat and you know how many people you might be catering for.
We're just gonna look to Ms. Hutchison. If there's any other questions from council, look around council. Is what's the timing like for getting this through? And what discussions can you have now or after?
Yes, so through the chair. So I do believe it's happening at the end of the month. Sorry, I don't have.
June 14th.
June 14th, thank you. Middle of next month. So we're coming up close. We can have conversations with the event organizer right away they have to pre-register. The participants that have pre-registered in the training are the ones that will be participating in the event itself. So they would have a pretty fair knowledge of who would be participating in that, and I think could build resources accordingly. But we could have that conversation with them to make sure that they do have sufficient resources such as the turning points and that. Yes, sorry.
Sure. I think if council was interested in adding 2 additional pieces to the recommendation, and that the event be capped at say 110 people, just to give them, we have to get hold of them to make sure that and that consideration for traffic safety as well. Would that be something we could do?
Yes, through the chair, we have required that, for parades and such, that traffic control, there is registered traffic control personnel available as part of the event. And so we can require that as part of their special event permit.
Yeah, I'd be happy as long as it's, put a cap in there, they know about it. If you make it 110.
Okay, so traffic control and a cap, a possible cap. My only concern about capping it is capping it arbitrarily. Like is 150 too much? That's the other thing. Maybe 120 is not too much, but so I just want to make sure that they want a successful. We're not inhibiting them from having a successful run without a clear understanding. How many people is too many people?
Through the chair, they did state in their permit, their special event application form that they were anticipating 100 people. So I think
110 is fine.
I think that's totally fair.
Dr. Master, you're happy with
Yeah,
that?
I'm happy with that.
Okay, well then let's what we can do is we can add 2 bullet points to the recommendation. One is provision of traffic control and a participant cap of 1. Council? Is okay with it? Staff's okay? They'll be okay? Makes sense. Well, then, Council Master, how would you like to read that? Punishment.
Just read that long one.
I've got it. I'll move that staff be authorized to issue a special event permit for use of the multi-use path, Lynn Road, pedestrian lane, and Chesterton Beach to organizers of the Coastal Yeehaw Half Marathon event scheduled to be held June 14th, 2025, including the following conditions. Put these 2 new ones in. Get them. Provision of traffic control. That the event be capped at 110 participants. Provision of a certificate of insurance naming the District of Tofino as additional insured. Provision of an event safety plan. Provision of a $500 refundable damage deposit. Copy of any ground land approval required by the Ministry of Water, Land and Resource Stewardship based on the proposed activity on the foreshore.
And wait, we're not done. Data provision of traffic control. Oh, you said at the beginning?
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, geez. Okay, good. Second by Councilor Master. Any further comments? All in favor? None opposed, motion carried. My apologies. It's good. Files of unfinished business initiated by council members, committee and external appointment report reports. Councilor Steer.
Yes, thank you through the chair. Just two quick ones. Wiccan Community School meeting that was on May 21st. The good news on that one, I think there's going to be a delegation coming to council on the June 2nd committee of the whole. Our executive director of the Wiccan Community School is reaching out to staff, and then we'll present to council on all things Wiccan Community School. So that will be his update to council on all the wonderful things that are going on there. And then just a quick second one, last week on Tuesday, we had a Marine Emergency Coordination Committee meeting. This is something that Coast Guard, the Canadian Coast Guard, it's a multi-agency meeting that took place in Tofino. This has been ongoing for several years now. And we had the participation locally of our emergency programmer, coordinator, and our fire chief, volunteer fire chief, Mark, as well, attended that. It was well attended, once again, to coordinate those efforts around marine emergency responses and multi-agencies. There's about at least a dozen agencies that were involved in that, and went super well. And I want to really thank staff, Mark and Hillary, for their participation in that meeting. And that is all.
Excellent. Yeah. And we are going into closed session. Oh, question. So you have question. Oh, wait, question period. Where do we go here? Gosh. Leave that here. Question period, Mr. McCall.
Thank you, Mayor Law. I'll now do an open call for questions to both members of the public present in the gallery and those participating online. For those in the gallery who wish to speak, please raise your hand. If there's anyone attending online via Zoom that would like to ask a question, you can do so now using the Q&A function. I'll now do an open call, calling once, calling twice, calling 3 times. No current questions at this time.
Okay, super. All right, then I'll move from the chair. The meeting be closed to the public pursuant to section 91I and 2B. The committee charter to discuss matter related to the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. The consideration of information received and held in confidence relating to negotiations between the municipality and provincial government or the federal government or both, or between a provincial government and the federal government or both, and a third party. Thank you, Councilor Anderson. Further comments? All in favor? None opposed, motion's carried. Okay, we'll take 5 minutes here and we'll get
I'll mute the mics.